Mega Drive profile.
Today you will learn everything there is to know about Gunstar Heroes, one of the best games of all time. So without further ado, let's get started.
Gameplay.
Gunstar Heroes is a 2D running gun in the same vein as Contra with some core differences. And to be quite frank, it might sound like I am describing Alien Soldier at some points, but that is to be expected, especially when we consider the nature of both games. At the very start, you can pick between two shooting modes. Free mode lets you move and shoot at the same time, while fixed mode allows you to shoot in 8 directions, but only while standing still. Then you must pick one of the 4 starting weapons. Force is your standard weapon, which fires rapid bullets like a machine gun. Lightning Force shoots lasers in a straight line and can pierce through several enemies. Chaser Force fires green arrows that home in on enemies and objects, but is also the weakest starting weapon of the 4. Flame Force is a flamethrower with very high damage at the cost of short range. In the midst of chaos, you will come across flying robots which can either drop new guns or health containers. A unique aspect of Gunstar is the ability to combine weapons. Equipping a second gun forms a brand new one, and you can also select the weapons by themselves if you please. There is a total of 14 different combinations possible, including the 4 starting guns. When you think about it, you actually have access to 3 weapons, provided your starting weapons aren't duplicates. My advice is to experiment because some combinations are better suited for a fixed mode rather than a free mode and vice versa. Shooting games were mainly focused on firing projectiles, but titles like Thunder Fox and Gunstar incorporated melee attacks to give the player another way of destroying enemies instead of relying solely on guns. You can grab enemies and throw them at others to inflict massive damage, and in co-op, your partner can be tossed as a means of offense. Take it easy because you don't want to throw your partner on accident while shooting. Sliding is quite useful to push back and relieve pressure, as there is much to be found here in Gunstar. By doing a full circle motion forward while pressing A lets you charge at enemies. It has the same effect as sliding and is great for canceling shots. By pressing the shot and jump button simultaneously, you can block smaller projectiles and absorb damage. I find this useful since your character suffers knockback when taking damage, so blocking is a good substitute. Your last move is the ability to perform air dives and somersaults. I love this as you can wall jump off the edges of the screen to perform evades and works as a melee move to damage enemies and bosses in their sweet spots. Try doing these on the robots so you can get new weapons or even more health containers. The heads-up display is interesting for a very good reason because Gunstar introduces a life counter. You are able to get hit various times before you die, and you can extend the counter beyond 100 points. This also carries over to the next stage, and so on, as your health is refilled upon completing it. You'll notice there are 4 levels to choose from, and Gunstar allows you to progress in your desired order. Each level in the game offers something new and fresh to keep the player going. It gets even better, because one of the greatest details of Gunstar is the difficulty setting. Unlike Alien Soldier, I have an easier time recommending this game to friends, as there are multiple settings to choose from, and there's always co-op if you want to have a blast with a pal. However, if you're like me who craves the hardcore challenge, Treasure has this quite in mind. Cranking up the difficulty to hard or above changes the game's behavior. Now that sounds pretty obvious, but this is a treasure game, so it works a bit differently than most. Enemies approach in bigger groups and simply want to destroy you by any means necessary. They have more health, and this includes bosses of all types. Your character takes almost twice the damage as a result. On top of that, they can perform alternate attacks and patterns to keep even the most perceptive players on their toes. One of the major examples is 7 Force. On easy you fight 3 forms, on normal you will face 5, but on hard or expert you will face all 7 and they are significantly more aggressive in the process. I think this kind of design is great on Treasure's behalf since it definitely adds replayability, plus the stages themselves are already varied enough to begin with. Do yourself a tremendous favor and play this classic masterpiece if you haven't done so already. It's totally worth it, and there is no damn doubt in my mind.
Graphics.
It's no secret that the Mega Drive can only show 64 colors on screen at once. Gunstar Heroes is a damn fine example of a game that manipulates the console into outputting what seems like double, if not triple, its color count. In a 1993 interview from GameFan, Treasure CEO Masato Maegawa talks about overcoming the system's limitations. When you look at games like Sonic or Gunstar, you would think it shows more than 64 colors, but they don't. We just know how to manipulate the color palette. In my opinion, the color itself looks as good as a SNES. We can make 3 to 4 screens present, although supposedly you can only show 2, background and foreground, at once. The Motorola 68000 is a very good CPU, allowing room for experimentation, while the SNES hardware limits you to their design standards. Scaling and rotation can be implemented in the Sega software, forget it on the SNES. Maegawa talks about scaling and rotation because this is precisely why 7 Force was created in the first place. It's not just called that because it contains 7 forms, but it's a jab at Nintendo's Mode 7 gimmick. Gunstar Heroes has a wide array of enemy and boss designs, giving the programmers a good excuse to showcase their hardware at its fullest. The core guard system is a fine example of this, displaying what seems like a 3D plane with multi-jointed animation. Seriously, I can't believe there are many skeptics and doubters of the Mega Drive's capabilities when you have stuff like this going on screen. Boggles my mind, honestly. Speaking of designs, I do enjoy the art style very much. The Mega Drive cover of Gunstar is one of my favorites due to its semi-comical direction induced with coolness. The Japanese are really good at this style, and the game itself reflects that very much. This is partly due to Treasure's illustrator and character designer Tetsuhiko Kikuchi, who also goes by the name of Han. He decided to name the characters by different colors, as Maegawa explains. Maybe for Han there was some deep meaning, but I think it's just a really good idea because it made it so easy for users to understand what was happening in the game. You will hear more about Han when I talk about a particular Mega Drive game in the future, but if there is anything you should know by now, is that Gunstar doesn't just feel good to play, but also feels great to look at.
Story and plot.
The Gunstar family has been the protector of the planet Gunstar 9 for generations. Professor White in his youth defeated the robot Gold and Silver, a machine that has traveled millions of miles to steal the planet's resources. The professor was able to extract the 4 mystical gems that serve as a power source for Gold and Silver, and was able to imprison him on the planet's moon. However, years later, a dictator named Smash Daisaku realized the Gunstar family knew the location of these mystical gems. And so, he kidnapped the Gunstar twins' older brother Green and bent him to his will. With Green's help, Daisaku stole the gems and turned the citizens of Gunstar into henchmen for his own personal army. With these forces on his side, the Colonel makes a departure for the moon to reactivate Gold and Silver. It is now up to Red and Blue to stop the dictator's evil ambitions and ultimately form the Gunstar Heroes!
Music and sound.
Something I highly respect from Treasure is that when they push hardware, they push everything, especially the sound of their own games. I feel like sound designers don't get the credit they deserve, since not every composer who has worked on the Mega Drive programs the entire game audio, much less the instruments found in their own proper songs. This isn't necessarily the entire case for Gunstar, but I mention this because it's always good to know that sometimes great music forms from a great partner. Composer Kazuo Hanzawa and sound designer Satoshi Murata did a tremendous job with Gunstar. Sound effects are great, from simple things like picking up weapons to the thumpiness of melee attacks. In my opinion, music is just as important as the gameplay, and man, Gunstar is supplied with a classic soundtrack that I never get tired of hearing. The songs contain fat, warm, bright leads to gritty FM melded with real upbeat bass lines. You can hear some of those infamous Konami orchestra hits Hanzawa must have adapted when he worked at Konami. When you really think about it, Hanzawa has a truly unique and distinguishable style that no one to this date has truly been able to crack. It's only his first game and he started with a fucking bang. Music and sound effects producers were Nan and Murata, who are both still here at Treasure. They always, without fail, wait for all levels of the game to be designed so that they can experience the movement of the whole game and then begin their compositions. An official arrangement album of Gunstar Heroes was released on October 23, 1993, 2 months after the game's release. Published by Pioneer, it contains 10 tracks arranged and performed by the likes of Nazo Suzuki and Jun Aire. This album is nowhere to be streamed on the internet, let alone YouTube. The only way to listen to it is to buy the album, but my buddy Justin Pfeiffer was generous enough to send me an album rip since he owns it. If you are watching this now, the album should be uploaded to my channel so you guys can check it out because it's actually pretty good, and I'll be honest, at the time of this recording, I've only just finished the album, so your ears are as fresh as mine. Without further ado, it's time to listen to the music that defines Gunstar Heroes.
development and philosophy.
In the game industry, talented designers and programmers defect from their parent companies to form their own. They all do this for one simple reason: to preserve their creative integrities. This is certainly the case for Masato Maegawa, a top-notch programmer with a pure vision and tons of experience. He worked on a handful of titles at Konami, but grew tired of programming mindless sequels for the corporate machine. Over time, his colleagues began sharing these same feelings, so he told them his plan of leaving Konami to form his own company to make original and creative games. Understand that at this point, Maegawa has some of Konami's best programmers on his side. These individuals include the likes of Hideyuki Suganami, who worked on Contra 3, and Kazuhiko Ishida, who programmed for Axley. During the years 1991 through 1992, Maegawa and his peers would have planned meetings at coffee shops to discuss game development, potential publishing, and establish TreasureCode.Ltd as a company's official name. All of this while still working at Konami, mind you. Treasure is now a private/independent developer, so in order to stabilize financially, they have to take work on a contractual basis. They were approached by McDonald's to make a game with their license. The game in question is of course McDonald's Treasureland, a 2D platformer which technically speaking is Treasure's true first game. This happened while pitching their original game to various publishers, until Sega agreed to publish their game without any creative compromise, except for a thing or two. The original name of this project was called Blade Gunner, a homage to Ridley Scott's 1988 film Blade Runner. Eventually, they settled with Lunatic Gunstar, but Sega of America didn't exactly approve of the name. Maegawa recalls saying, "We felt that the word lunatic was a perfect fit to convey the exhilaration of our game, what with all the explosions and detonations. But that didn't go down too well with Sega of America, who thought that the word lunatic conveyed a really bad image. The Heroes part of the title came from Sega of America. They seemed to think that Heroes was a cool term because it carried a notion of there being some great sense of justice in the game. So in the end, we were requested to adopt the Gunstar Heroes title." Most fans can tell you that Sega of America made some questionable and just outright naive decisions. Gunstar almost became a Japanese exclusive game if it wasn't for Max Senior, a producer at Sega of America. He explains the story of how Gunstar was rejected by all producers due to the game having small sprites. 12 people looked at it and passed before it got to me. If I didn't pick it up, it was going to get rejected. I played it for 5 minutes, maybe less, and then threw the controller on the floor and said, "This is game of the year." Everyone in earshot laughed. The reason was made very clear to me. Gunstar had small characters. We had just published, or were about to publish, World Series Baseball with a huge batter. All the games were showing off something the developers of Spider-Man had discovered, a way to make double high sprites. Gunstar didn't use this, so the others passed. I saw it as something different. I have to say, I only made one real change. There's the boss in the military uniform, and in the original version, he was Hitler. I asked him to remove the mustache or change the character. The character Senior is referring to is of course Smash Daisaku, who also looks a lot like M. Bison from Street Fighter. His statement makes a lot more sense because if you take a closer look at Daisaku's henchmen, they all seem to be making similar poses and gestures like actual Nazi troops. Daisaku isn't the only one that resembles other fictional characters either. The trio Pink, Kane, and Kotaru look a lot like Grandis Granva, Hansen, and Samson from the anime movie Nadia Secret of the Blue Water. But honestly, my favorite is the one and only Gunstar Green, as he looks similar to Vegeta from Dragon Ball Z. There was one cool little secret I'd like to show you. In Stage 5, there is a boss called Timeron, which presents an endurance challenge to the player. As time goes on, so does the pressure, but if you can manage to survive for 100 minutes, something interesting happens. Gunstar Heroes released on September 9th, 1993 to critical acclaim from reviewers and publications everywhere. It won EGM's award for Best Action Game of 1993 and is frequently mentioned in the list that tell the best games of all time. It also received a port by M2 for the Game Gear. This version was exclusive to Japan and was scaled down due to the obvious difference in power between the Mega Drive and Game Gear. Changes include the removal of co-op, certain graphical effects, and Black's Dice Maze. Something you probably didn't know is that this game also has a Master System port, which is exclusive to Brazil. The port itself was supervised by Maegawa and was made in high demand as both Mega Drive and Master System were very popular in that country. In 2005, Gunstar Heroes would appear alongside Alien Soldier and Dynamite Headdy as part of the treasure box for PS2. This release is very interesting because it contains the original design documents where most of the info I have relayed comes from. The producer of the treasure box is a mega fan of Treasure themselves and desperately urged the team to include the prototype ROM of Gunstar as a secret. You can find this ROM easily, and it does contain some differences, such as alternate animations and sound effects. This is a very common thing with prototypes, as they are usually meant for press releases. That very same year, a sequel was released titled Gunstar Superheroes for the Game Boy Advance. We will definitely be talking about this at some point in the future. In the following years to come, Gunstar would make itself available on the Wii Virtual Console, Xbox Live, PSN, Steam, Sonic's Ultimate Genesis Collection, and one final port as part of the 3D Classics line for the Nintendo 3DS. As you can tell, there are many ways to play this magnificent game. In whichever way you can, please do yourself a humongous favor and experience this Mega Drive masterpiece. After all, it's a treasure game, so you know damn well it's gonna be good. That was Gunstar Heroes, one of the best games on Mega Drive and honestly of all time. If you are a Genesis owner and never played Gunstar before, you really should because it's a wonderful game from start to finish. Don't forget to check out the Gunstar Arrangement album on my channel if you'd like to. It's a pretty damn good album, I must say. I just checked my email right now and Treasure actually followed me on Twitter. That's fucking amazing. I think Maegawa is the one who runs that Twitter account as well. He is definitely a realistic individual from all their interviews I have scavenged and read from him. So Maegawa-san, thank you very much for Treasure's contributions to gaming as one of Treasure's biggest fans. I want to give some quick shoutouts before we wrap things up here. First off, a huge thanks to Gali for making my banner, avatar, and also helping me out with the thumbnail. He is the creator of the 4th Modulator Discord server, and if you like FM synthesis from the technical standpoint or the artistic, then consider joining the server. There are tons of people there, and maybe you will find a familiar face. If you are watching this right now, buddy, thank you very much again, and please check out his 2612 covers. My man's Dustin Odell Official. Thank you very much for uploading the hardware rips of Mega Drive soundtracks. You are doing an awesome thing, because hearing those classic songs with a Mega Amp is fucking amazing. I highly recommend checking his channel out. All profiles on games contain links to his soundtrack rips, so you can hear the tracks as meant to be. Lately I have been digging FM covers of Alienator. This guy knows his shit because he made the 2612 sound like a fucking PC engine. That's insane. Go listen to this track in particular, it's freaking sick. My personal thanks to Shock Dingo for once again narrating the story segment of the profile. His voice box is insane, man. I tried to do something with the story cuts to change it up a bit, you know, because it can get kinda boring after a while, honestly. And I get to test my editing skills, like if I fucking had any. But you get the idea, man, so big thanks to him. Now that the video is completed, I get to play some games on my log, such as Ninja Gaiden 3 Razor's Edge. I'm a big Ninja Gaiden head, so I'm real excited to play that, as I have never even touched the vanilla version of 3 either. I also love Call of Duty, especially Black Ops 2, that's my favorite, as you are seeing here. They just made it backwards compatible on Xbox One, so I have been getting my multiplayer fix on. My gamer tag is UrbanFlowX26, so you can add me if you play on Xbox One or 360. I have and play on both systems, since not all games are backwards compatible yet anyways. Okay guys, well it's time to wrap things up. If you have any questions or concerns, feel free to drop a comment down below. Links to all channels and music will be in the description as well. I hope you guys have a good one, and I'll see you on the next episode of Mega Drive Profile.